probably before I get halfway through this press conference, you will be thinking, why in the world is he saying these horrible things? Well, you need to know. You need to know in the real world, when people don't do what's right, really, really, really bad things happen. So we're going to tell you what this child experienced at the hands of their parents because the parents didn't do the right thing. I want to introduce you to the parents, Takesha Williams, who's 24, and Efren Allen Jr., who's 25. Here's when it all began. In July of 2020, when this beautiful baby boy was only 10 months old, he suffered a near-drowning experience at a short-term rental in the northeast area of the county. A near drowning. He toddled off into the pool. There was life-saving efforts to try to save this baby's life. When they got him to the hospital, at the conclusion of all of their valiant efforts, the child had no brain activity, could not even blink his eyes, cannot move his extremities, and quite frankly, it was recommended to the parents that he be removed from any life-saving measures because the child would forever be in a coma with no brain activity. They didn't want to do that. So ultimately, these parents were sent home with their infant on a ventilator, a permanent ventilator, with a stomach tube, and health care, home health care 3 times a week. Now that went on for over 2 years. As of last October, the parents began to reject the home health care. Despite the health care company's best efforts, they would not be home, would not answer the door. So the last time home health care dealt with this child was in October of last year. Understand, all of this was occurring at absolutely no cost to the parents. In fact, the mother was receiving benefits to stay home and take care of this baby. So let's fast forward to Friday, May the 12th. There's a 911 call to the city of Bartow, to the Azalea Apartments where they live, where the mother said, you know, the child's pulsometer is not working correctly. This is really not an emergency. You don't need red lights and sirens, but we'd like fire to come over and check the baby. So they responded to the house in a normal, routine fashion. And when they arrived, they saw this child hooked up to a ventilator. And this ventilator was working appropriately, but there appeared to be no life in the child. This child had an extremely extended stomach, and it was green. This child was rotting in the bed. They rushed this baby to the hospital, where for over an hour, or about an hour, between EMS, fire services, and medical personnel, they tried to save this baby's life. At the hospital, when they started taking off the diapers and the clothes, they noticed ulcers, large gaping wounds through the body down into the muscle. They noticed there was no rectum. There was just a big gaping hole where the intestines and the spinal column was visible. They notified the Bartow Police Department, who immediately said, hey, we need the sheriff's office to assist us. This is a very complex investigation. So our homicide team responded. We noticed immediately the child smelled of decomposition. We went back to the house where the child laid lifeless as it had for 2 years and smelled decomposition in the room. The medical doctor at the emergency room said this child has not had the appropriate care for months. The medical examiner at the autopsy said the child had sepsis, bilateral pneumonia, stage 5 ulcers, obvious not child neglect. So we talked to the parents and we go, what is going on here? They said, well, they didn't want DCF to take their children, so they didn't call. But they had tried to get more home health care, so we introduced ourselves to the potential health care providers, and they said, we accepted them. We went there and wanted to see the child. They said, don't wake the child up today. This is just an introduction. And the next time they went, nobody answered the door. So obviously they were trying to create a facade or to say, well, we asked for help. They let this baby rot and die in its bed. I've done this for 5 decades. I have seen thousands of children abused, hundreds of children murdered at the hands of parents. I have never seen the horror that we saw with this poor child at the hands of these 2 folks. I talked to all the detectives in the room. Have you ever seen anything like this in your life? No one has. You can't even imagine how horrible the wounds, the ulcers that this child endured at the hands of these folks. They're charged with aggravated manslaughter, among other charges, at this time. They were locked up in the county jail with a bond of $100,000. The state attorney's office actually filed direct once we got the initial medical examiner's report. The state attorney's office, Brian Haas, our state attorney, who is simply the very best, is game on every day. And I'm certain if you talk to him, he would be as mortified as we all are that this baby was left in this condition. My job is to protect children, to protect everyone. But my heart is with protecting the very youngest, because you see, they have no choice of where they live, or what they eat, or what they wear, or who they associate with. It's up to parents to make the right decisions. And I suggest to you the right decisions haven't been made since this child was 10 months old and suffered a horrible, horrible, horrible tragedy. And then I suggest to you, and this is only supposition on my part, they just got tired of the baby. They just got tired of the intensive care this child needed. And as a result, the child laid there and suffered and suffered and suffered, till finally there was no life left in the baby. There's nothing else I can tell you. If you have any questions, there's still nothing else I can tell you. You know what we know.
Curious about the other children, or do they appear to be in good health?
The other children appear to be in good health.
Sheriff, beyond what the legal system can exact on these 2, what do they deserve?
Well, the legal system can only do what the legal system can do. But there's no way, no ability to imagine the torture this child has endured.
I'm not exactly sure how to phrase this, but is there any part of you that says at least the child appears to have been unconscious for this entire time?
The indication to us is the child has been comatose from the very beginning, to the point there was no reaction. The child couldn't even blink his eyes. So my prayer would be that the child was in a deep enough state that he wasn't aware of what was happening to him. But I don't know that.
You mentioned that they were concerned about DCF taking the other children away. Do you know of any other interactions with DCF over the years that you've had, or that we have?
I would be hesitant to release the DCF information. I think once before they had an investigation way back in the day, but nothing significant.
So is there a chance that these children will be removed?
Well, first off, they have to be removed because they're in jail, and ultimately our goal is to send these folks to prison for just as long as we can send them to prison, and then from there God's got to take over. But I've never seen it. There's not words to explain this. There's not words to describe this. You think in this world we live in, it's impossible for parents or anyone to treat a child like this. They let this baby lay in that bed and rot to death.
Were you able to look at the pictures?
All of them. The pictures were horrific. It was even more horrific for my detectives and supervisors who were there and had the horrible stench to go along with it. It is just, there's no words to explain it. And I've seen some really bad stuff in my career. I have never seen anything like this. You will never unsee this. If you live to be 100 years old, you will never unsee this.
What do you say to parents out there, who feel overwhelmed? This is an extreme case, I get that. But what do you say to parents out there who may be feeling overwhelmed with a child who has special needs or other very difficult obstacles in life?
Well, parents who feel overwhelmed, who have children that are presenting challenges for them, there's help. You only have to reach out. We live in a wonderful state. We live in a wonderful community. We live in a wonderful country. No child has to be left in this condition.
Terrible, terrible tragedy out there in Florida. Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd giving this update.
Four men have been arrested in connection with a human trafficking case. Florida's Attorney General says it's some of the worst activity she's ever seen.
Human trafficking is now happening online. The teen involved in this case had her iPad and her phone taken away. She met her trafficker through a dating app through her TV. This human trafficking case tragically starts off like many others, with the trafficker manipulating the victim into believing that he loves her.
We cannot live in a society where pedophilia is normal. These young kids have no idea what's going on. They're being manipulated.
Sheriff Chris Nacco says 44-year-old Randy Kofeld targeted a 15-year-old girl on a dating site in December. He got naked photos of the teen and began posting them on social media to solicit the girl for sex.
From the very beginning of their conversations, when they first start speaking, the victim says, hey, I just want to let you know I'm 15 years old. And he goes, that's okay, I like them young.
Deputies learned Kofelt arranged for these three men, ages 68, 33, and 29, to come to the teen's home. Investigators say Kofelt ordered the girl to have sex with the men who would take videos, then send them to Kofelt, where he posted them online. It wasn't until last month when the girl tried running away from school. That's when she was rescued by deputies and told her story to a victim's advocate.
The victim advocate who worked with the victim made sure that she knew she could trust law enforcement and trust the advocate, helped her recall information, helped her identify offenders. Extraordinarily important.
Now authorities believe there are more victims.
It's not your fault. Please have the courage to come forward.
4 men have been arrested and charged in connection with this case. Florida has its own human trafficking hotline. You can call 1-855-FLA-SAFE.
4 men are under arrest accused of being involved in a disturbing case of human trafficking involving a 15-year-old girl. Tonight, investigators believe there may be additional victims as well out there.
In December of last year, Pasco Sheriff Chris Nacco says 44-year-old Randy Kofelt of Clay County met a 15-year-old girl online on the website Chat Avenue. He says her age didn't seem to bother Kofelt.
From the very beginning of their conversations, when they first start speaking, the victim says, hey, I just want to let you know I'm 15 years old. And he goes, that's okay, I like them young.
From there, the sheriff says Kofelt began a pattern of grooming the young girl. First were the explicit photos. Then he says Kofelt began directing her to have sex with adult men in Pasco County, film it, and then Kofelt was posting it online. She had sex with at least 3 men, including one who had previously been caught up in a sex sting in 2013.
I say that deepest sincerity. We cannot live in a society where pedophilia is normal. These young kids have no idea what's going on. They're being manipulated.
The disturbing case was finally uncovered after the girl ran from school last month and was found by deputies. She was on her way to meet one of those men. All 4 now face serious sex crimes.
If we can't act quickly, that's another victim that has to endure this for longer. And we will not have that in Florida.
And the sheriff believes there are other victims out there. He's asking that they please come forward tonight and share their stories. Certainly additional charges are possible.
Keeps going out of control. Randy Kofelt then gets naked pictures of the victims. He then starts pushing them out there, trying to get other pedophiles out there. And so what Randy Kofelt started doing was manipulating the whole situation. He had naked pictures of the victim. He then started posting on a social media site for other pedophiles to go out there and other scumbags to start looking at. Then his plan was that he was going to have them make videos with this girl. He was soliciting her out. Now Randy is up in Clay County, and down here in Pasco County, he's soliciting this 15-year-old girl to have sex with people to make videos. So that's what he was doing. So he would set him up. He'd say, hey, look, I want you to make this video. And then he was putting on a website called Adult Friend Finder. And I guess on this site, there's a $30 charge to get in. Then you can charge additionally to watch these videos. But it's basically, this is child pornography that they're setting up and they're putting on these sites. And so, you know, as he's going through this girl's now 16 years old. And so men start showing up to her house. On March 19th of 2023, Randy Kofelt arranged for 69-year-old Sydney Smith to have sexual intercourse with the 16-year-old victim. Sydney Smith picks her up at her house. They drive to Sydney's house. He's getting her drunk at the place. They start videotaping it. But this is how sick this whole situation is. Randy Kofelt starts telling the victim, you're not doing it right. This is what I want you to do. I don't want to get into details of it. It's horrible. But he's basically directing what's going on. He's getting upset with her. And at one point he says, if you're not going to do what I tell you, I'll just find other girls. So you just see a 44-year-old male manipulating this 16-year-old little girl. On March 19th and March 20th, 33-year-old Brandon Sarno was picked up the victim at her house. Brandon Sarno went to the woods with her. They started using drugs. He then pulls out his cell phone as if he's going to record, but then he says, oh, my recording didn't work, which, of course, the main suspect in this case gets upset about. But I'm going to point out 2 things. One is Brandon Sarno was arrested in 2013 for similar style charges under an FDLE sting. FDLE did their job. But unfortunately, this suspect, this criminal, this scumbag, was back out on the street, and he did it again. The other part is, we believe that he was street smart. He knew that he had made that video and then sent it to Randy, that would have been additional charges. So he's like, oh, my phone didn't work. But that's the type of people we're dealing with. But let me point out that also at this time, Brandon Sarno starts grooming the victim. He starts figuring out, this girl is vulnerable. I'm right here in this community. Let me start grooming her. On March the 20th, Randy Colfelt tells the victim that another male is going to be coming to her house. Randy Colfelt tells the victim exactly where to go, how to perform these sexual acts. The 29-year-old John Kahindi picks her up at the house. They go to the Days Inn in Port Richey. They perform the sexual acts and videotape it and then send it to Randy Colfelt. Then afterwards, and then he uploads it to Adult Friend Finder again. And John Kahindi then takes the victim to the store to get vape. Randy Colfelt kept demanding more of the victim. And at this point, the victim's kind of like, whoa, what's going on? Are you uploading these videos? Are you doing this? And he's like, no, I'm not doing that. And so she kind of breaks it off where she stops communicating with him. Randy Colfelt then emails her. He starts sending explicit pictures of adult males. He then asks her, do you still love me? What's going on? Do you still want to make these videos? And she kind of hangs up and she starts engaging that person. So I go back to the beginning of the story. In April 2023, when deputies pick her up, she was actually, what she was going when she ran away from school was that she was trying to find Brandon Sarno, who I go back to was the second suspect in this case that FDLE had arrested back in 2013, who was back out in the streets, being a predator, trying to manipulate these young girls. And who would have known what this guy would have done had, patrol deputies not picked her up and not rescued her from that situation. So I know I'm trying to go through this. It's a big case. But what I'm saying, I go back to it. What our detectives had to see on those videos, what Rita Peters had to go through, I can never explain it. I will never want to explain it. I will never want to talk about it. But it's horrific. Randy Colfelt on his phone, when they're still going through the investigation through search warrants. I mean, we did everything we were supposed to do legally. We went through search warrants, got everything I had to do. You find videos of 2 to 6-year-old kids, over hundreds of them. They're saying they're still going through and they can't find hundreds of them. But you're seeing, male, female, bestiality. You're seeing things that nobody should ever have to see. This Randy Colfelt, I know one thing he said was that he's scared to death of going to prison. Randy Colfelt, you should be scared to death to have to see God. God's going to be the ultimate decider upon you for what you've done to all these people. As I go back to, this is still an ongoing case. There's a couple of things I want to explain and talk about, and the fact of what we need out there from the community. One is we need anybody else who's been a victim, anybody, realize you're the victim. It's not your fault. Please have the courage to come forward. Please come forward, help out, because as bad as you feel, there's somebody else who feels horrible too, and maybe you are the one that rescues them. The other one too is with human trafficking. Everybody thinks, this happens in the streets, it happens in, restaurants or massage parlors. It's happening online now. So be aware of that. For parents, recognize this young girl, she had her iPad taken away from her, she had her phone taken away from her. But what wasn't taken away was the TV. So she was using a television app to go on there and communicate with Randy Colfelt. We have to find a way to civilly go after these websites. If they're not going to protect our kids, we need to go after them. They have a civil responsibility to protect children. If they know what's going on, the content going on there, we have to go after them. And then the other one is, we can never live in a society where pedophilia is normal. I say that deepest sincerity. We cannot live in a society where pedophilia is normal. These young kids have no idea what's going on. They're being manipulated. And for those 2 to 6-year-olds that are on that site, this is horrible. We cannot normalize this. And with that being said, before I bring the general up, I just ask again, everybody pray. I ask God Almighty to look upon. Nobody has to go through this hell that these kids are living with. So I just pray that we can find these kids, we can rescue these kids, and the victim advocates can take them out of the hell they're in. So with that being said, General Moody, appreciate it.
Thank you, Sheriff. And Pasco County Sheriff's Office got a lot of praise for me before we came out here, but I just want to say to this community, the Tampa Bay community, Pasco County is really doing some things right. They have not only their detectives and their deputies that are educated and trained in human trafficking, but they give and support their victim advocates. And the victim advocates in many of these cases are the reason a case succeeds or fails. The reason we can put a horrific individual who is only going to harm people in our community behind bars, or we don't. And so in this case specifically, the victim advocate who worked with the victim made sure that she knew she could trust law enforcement and trust the advocate, helped her recall information, helped her identify offenders. Extraordinarily important. And so I commend her, and I know that Pasco County is very proud of her actions. This is an incredibly devastating, tragic case. It's some of the worst activity that I have seen in human trafficking, and we often talk about human trafficking and what sets it apart from other types of sex crimes. It's when coercion of some sort is used to force a person. It doesn't have to be a child. Many of our cases in which we rescue people, they're not children, but they force individuals into sexual or labor activities against their will. In this case, a man had significant control of a child by using his purported affection and love. And the threat of taking that away or shifting that to another victim terrified this young girl. And so she would do whatever he asked her to, with whomever. And that is what these men and women standing behind me did. They uncovered that. And we know that he had already threatened this young victim with finding someone else. So this young victim who bravely came forward and worked with law enforcement officers, no doubt has saved other young girls from going through this same hell. As a mother of a young child who is often online, this hits us all to our core, especially if right now you have young children at home. You can't help but go there and start imagining this happening in your own family. But indeed, all of these young children in Florida need protection. And they all need people to care about them. And that's what's great about this department and what they've done today. I'm also incredibly proud that this case, which spanned beyond jurisdictional boundaries, beyond age limits, we were able to bring in partners that have been highly trained and are set up to immediately go after these folks in other counties. FDLE, thank you so much for your efforts. Clay County, who is here today with us, provided tremendous assistance in a search warrant and an arrest in their county. And we were able to quickly identify other offenders and arrest them and take them off the streets. This is a great example of how within Florida, we have been able to identify this crime, how it is infiltrating throughout our different jurisdictions, and assemble a team that can be effective and efficient, strike quickly in bringing perpetrators to justice. So this is a great example, and I'm so proud of this team, and I'm glad you are here to help us inform the community of their efforts. I'm also proud of my statewide prosecutors. Since taking office, they knew how much this crime and atrocity meant to me. They have been diligent in their efforts. They have a near perfect conviction rate. I believe they've put about 100 traffickers behind bars in that short amount of time. Thank you so much. I probably don't say that enough, but it means so much to me, not just as the Attorney General, but as a fifth-generation Floridian and a mom who cares about this state and wants to do right by our children. Thank you so much. You should really never talk about family. It gets you. Eradicating this crime from Florida is one of my top priorities. We will keep working on this. We will fill the gaps. We will make sure that we have trained, not just trained and well-resourced groups to eradicate this crime, but the right individuals with the right passion and perspective and diligence and immediacy behind their actions. Because as I tell them, and they would tell you, if we can't act quickly, that's another victim that has to endure this for longer. And we will not have that in Florida. I want to also say in Florida, we've done some things uniquely as it relates to human trafficking. When it came to our attention that we may not be getting all of the information to law enforcement quickly from the National Human Trafficking Hotline, We developed our own hotline. We now have people in place for Floridians to call if they suspect trafficking or if they themselves have been trafficked. It's 1-855-FLA-SAFE. 1-855-FLA-SAFE. You can call that at any time if you suspect trafficking, and we will bring our team and engage our highly trained team. And what can the community do? Not only can you report it if you suspect it to the hotline, you can go to youcanstopht.com, youcanstopht.com. My office has recently released an online toolkit for parents and guardians. We're about to enter into summer. I know this all too well. There's a lot of free time on our children's hands. And why is that dangerous? Because online predators await. That is what happened in this case. It began on a chat room, but I can tell you we have had successful prosecutions that started on gaming apps. So whether it's a chat room, a gaming app, a more popular social media app, this is how offenders are connecting with our victims, our children. Parents, guardians, you have to be engaged. You have to stay on top of it. And if you don't know where to stop, go to youcanstopht.com and use our online safety toolkit. We're going to be releasing in the next few weeks some other tips for parents and guardians in dealing with what the summer and the time off and the idle time can bring, those challenges to families. Again, I thank the Clay County Sheriff's Office, the Pasco County Sheriff's Office. They have been dogged in this case. It is truly impressive. And FDLE, who I know will continue to be a leader and continue to bring to bear the full weight and might and determination of this state to make Florida a zero-tolerance state. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you, General. I want to express my profound appreciation for the work of our agents and analysts that did on this case, and our ongoing partnership with the Pasco Sheriff's Office, and the leadership of Attorney General Moody and her Office of Statewide Prosecution. Rita Peters, she's a rock star. Thank you, Rita. This case involves a cross-section of the worst crimes we see, as the sheriff spoke about: human trafficking, sex crimes, and preying on Florida's youth. I hope this case serves as a warning to would-be criminals that if you try to exploit our children or think you can manipulate and victimize our citizens and get away with it, I promise you it won't end well. Together with partners across the state, like the ones that are sitting alongside me here today, we will continue to identify and target you. The arrests that we announced today were only possible because of the courage of this young victim to come forward and tell the painful truth, and the diligence of these victim advocates. This serves as a sign of hope for victims of human trafficking and sexual abuse. You are not alone, and help is available. Already this case stretches halfway across the state from Pasco to Clay County. And with the digital nature of Kofeldt's grooming, there is no telling how wide of a span geographically his crimes could have extended. It's important to know that we have not completed this case, and we are seeking the public's help to ensure other victims receive justice and other criminals face the consequences of their actions. As investigators continue to pour through digital evidence and probe for more potential victims or accomplices, anyone with information related to this case, we please, as a general reference, the phone number, please contact 1-855-FLA-SAFE to help us put this guy away for a very long, long time. Thank you very much. Thank you to Clay County as well for your assistance last week. Thank you. Any questions?
Sheriff, just to clarify, did Kofeldt ever meet this victim in person, or everything he did was?
Yeah, everything was online. Everything through social media, through those sites. That's how he interacted. That's how he found her. That's how he interacted with her, and that's how. And then through phone calls, he would then. So when she was meeting up with these, with the three suspects, she would, he would call her, say, hey, this is what's going to happen. He would even tell her, this is what I want you to wear. This is what I want you to do. This is what's going to happen. And sometimes while they're at those locations, he was still in contact with them. So that's how it was all done through that way.
Were these men paying him for?
So that's part of the investigation, which we're finding out now, but it appears that everything was done like, hey, you do this video for me. I then, these three suspects were sending the videos. As they would send the videos, and he was putting them online to make money. So that's how everything, the transactions were all moving that way. So that's like, I go back to technology is moving so quickly that, you know, I get in the past to be, oh, here's X amount of dollars or a credit or whatever it is. But now it's, hey, you do this, I'll give you this, but now I'm going to pay you through this video. And now with this video, it's going to go online. And then, you know, these sites, and that's what I go back to, these sites need to monitor, they need to be held responsible for them, because these people are making a lot of money putting criminal videos on their sites. You know, the victim advocate, you know, Kim, you want to speak about that? How is she doing right now?
She's doing better. She's in her healing phase right now. It's going to be a long journey for her, but we are diligent to walk alongside her to ensure that she does reach her full potential in life and to continue to wrap her with wraparound care services.
When she ran or left school, you said she was going to meet a man. Which one of these guys was it she was going to meet?
So it was Brandon, the one who had been arrested before back in 2013 by FDLE. Because from the time when he met her, they did drugs and had sexual intercourse or sexual encounter in the woods. At that point, we believe he started grooming her, and he was trying to take her away from Randy.
Did these men know each other?
The only thing we're finding out right now, and I'll let I don't know if you guys can follow up on this. The only thing is, basically, he had taken those pictures of her. He posts them online. As he posts them online, he's out there searching for other pedophiles like him and other predators like him. Hey, who's interested? And then that's how they made the connection that way. So, who wants to touch on that?
So they didn't know each other at all. He would reach out to them through the Adult Friend Finder website. He would speak with them, and ultimately a lot of them would use a downloaded app to try to match their phone number. They did speak back and forth via text and a little bit on the phone, but however, they were never introduced. They didn't know each other as far as their true identity. As far as I know, they don't even know who each other are. I mean, they may know, but.
And did any of them make any statements after they were arrested as to how in the world they ever got to the place that they're at in terms of these really odd desires?
Only Kofelt. Kofelt claims to be a porn-addicted individual, and it ended up starting as a fantasy, and he just went down the rabbit hole, according to him, and that's what he's holding true to.
What led to her finally telling law enforcement about all this?
This young lady right here. Ultimately, she built up a relationship with her, was starting to talk, and then with these cases, she will bring us in when they're ready. We get introduced, by the time the victim meets us, they already know, hey, this is my friend. That's how she introduces her. And then there's a lot that goes into it to get them to start to open up to us. It's a tiered relationship. So once they have built that trust with them, they'll reach out to us, fill us in on kind of a background of the victim, so we're not coming in there blind. And then even then, it takes hours. And then once the trust is built, and even 3-4 months later, we're just now getting to where the victim will reach out to me directly. You know, so it's without the victim advocate, you can't do these investigations at all.
And there's a fear that there could be many other teenage girls like this.
Yes, sir.
That happen.
You said you're looking for more victims of Kofelt. Was he using his real name and photo?
He was.
You mentioned that rabbit hole that I guess he went down. I'm wondering, some people who are considered pedophiles know they're a pedophile, or are they going, you know what I mean, do they admit it to you, or they just say they went down the rabbit hole and justify it?
No, sir, they're not going to admit that outright. You know, they know what they are, but they have excuses for everything. But he knew that was a child.
So the victim, she contacted the services that were provided, or how did that?
I believe you were already involved. I believe she was already involved with her previously, and that's just they had a relationship, and she was just working with her through various avenues to help her heal.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate you guys being here.
Thank you.